Can you guys see my face good?
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to the Total Game Basketball Academy podcast, hosted by Tony J. Coleman, sports and education consultant. Our focus is to educate and support families of student athletes as they navigate through the recruiting process, the NIL, and life after sports. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Tony Coleman TGBA. And now, here's Tony.
Well, good morning and welcome to another edition of the Total Game Sports Media Podcast. I'm your host, Tony Coleman, and I have four unique and special guests with me this morning. And these brothers were handpicked because I know that they will bring a lot to the table. And this particular discussion we're going to have this morning has all to do with saving college sports. There's a lot of dialogue happening across the country about what's going on. We're saying that, the Wild Wild West is taking place, right? With NILs and with student athletes in college and the transfer portal and all these other different things. So now we have on our hands the Congress, because of lawsuits that have stemmed and brought about the change for student athletes in the landscape. Now the president of the United States is trying to push some executive orders on some legislation that's going to, put control back into the hands of the NCAA organization, as well as all of the power Division I conferences to control this thing, because a lot of people say that things have gotten out of hand. So this has got to be a bipartisan thing, because there's a lot of different opinions out there. There's a lot of representation. There's things that many want to eliminate and get rid of. So we're going to delve in a little bit here and see exactly what's going through the minds of our brothers this morning. So let me begin with you, big fella, Randy. So now the fact that we have this NIL, right? So what is your mindset? What is your thoughts about, how this whole thing has transpired and changed college sports, as it relates to student athletes getting paid, the transfer portal, and all the financial dynamics that come along with that at every division, whether it's Division I, II, or Division III. If you can give me, your spin on that, and we'll go around the room and let it, each one, give some input on that.
Okay. I think, first of all, I don't have an issue with players getting money. I think that I'll go back to when I was a head coach at UMBC, and they were talking about, and we'll even go back further than that. Back when Chris Webber, Mike, by the way, I recruited Chris when I was at LaSalle University.
That's
I was
what's up, man.
a young, naive assistant coach thinking I could recruit Chris, but that's because we were in correspondence with one another.
Yeah.
And so even back when Chris Webber and the Fab Five were playing, they were talking about giving stipends at that time.
Yeah.
And we were in favor of that.
Yes, sir.
Like, I remember as a young assistant, I remember my head coach being in favor of it, because at that time you had players who needed to get home for personal issues, and they didn't have money to do that. Their families were struggling.
Some guys that have money for gas.
They have money for gas.
Right, exactly. Right. So then the college coaches were all in favor of that. I remember that, but nothing was really done about that.
Exactly.
They just put it on the table, and they just kept talking about it.
Yeah.
And so, meanwhile, the NCAA's pockets were getting fat. And so and we know that at the industry that the money that they bring in every
I mean, we're
year.
talking
So
billions of dollars, right? So
gazillions of dollars.
gazillions of
Yes,
dollars. It
yes.
didn't, it didn't, it
So
didn't. 50 years, it didn't looped over and over and over. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. So then we flip it to me as a head coach at UMBC,
Mm.
and it came up again. And so I remember being in favor of it. I remember the people in the media world saying to me, "Hey, what do you think about players, athletes getting paid?" I said, I'm in favor of it, as long as we can govern it and do it the right way.
That's it.
So of course my athletic director was not in favor of it. He's like, I don't think they should get paid, and so we disagreed on that. So and then here, some 15 years later, now we have the NIL.
All the way down to
And
high school.
and I'm in favor of NIL. Okay. I'm in favor of the players getting money. I think that the problem that you have is the players are now chasing the money. Okay. And so they're transferring from school to school to school. Okay. And to me, that's a little problematic because they're chasing that money. That money's only short lived. Okay. And you'll probably get the marquee players. Let's
Yeah.
say this: the marquee players are going to get the top dollar.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then you're going to have a lot of other players who are not going to get paid when we go down to the levels of Division 1, Division 2,
Yep.
Division 3. Okay.
Yep.
But for a young man to just transfer from school to school to school, and I think, and I get it, he's thinking of the now, the present,
Yep.
and he's not putting any thought process into the future.
Yes, sir.
So therefore, I'm just going to go from school to school to school. Now, the other day, I saw a player play. I'm not going to mention any names, any schools, but I saw a player play on a team that played with one of the young men that I had coached at St. Joe's Prep. That young man's about 26, 27 years old. Okay. And he's playing against college students, all right, who are like 18 to 22. So I think that's a little unfair advantage. But the problem that I foresee is when players are moving from school to school with just to chase the money, and there's, at some point in time that money's going to run out. I know they're getting pressure from their families to, to support. But I just think that we have to do something about that. You can transfer, but you only do it one time.
Yeah.
And you can play right away, but
Yeah.
you can't do it 3, 4, 5 times. I mean, I think that's to me, that's ludicrous.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a really good point. And we're going to come back to that. We're going to circle back to that, Randy. And we're going to talk about resolutions, on how to correct or what could be implemented to make that, scenario evaporate. Okay, we're going to come back and circle back to that. But everything that you're saying is dead on. And yeah, man. So these are things that must be addressed for sure. And so moving on, Brother Mike.
Yes, sir.
What's your thoughts, man, with NIL, the landscape as it is today, and some of the things that we're seeing and dealing with?
Well, I'm I'm a historian, so I'm gonna put it in context. It's like somebody left the gate open and all the cows are out to pasture. There's a lot of issues going on that restrict younger people from getting to us before they get the check, right? They don't know that we know all the stuff they're running into, right? And there's no open one, channel that all the historical athletes who didn't get paid can actually be a forum because we can't all go on campus. So I think the problem is if we educate those players before they get to the money, that's going to be get the parents out the way, get the coaches out the way, put us in a room with the players, right? If the alumni groups who pay them don't want us to tell these young players how to turn left, go right, drive down the quarter mile, back up, okay, study at this time of day, read at this time of day, eat this kind of food when you get this money, right? If we don't get a chance to get in front of those young people, a disaster is coming. A disaster is coming. It's going to be a situation where we talk about 5 years for professional athletes, mostly men. 5 years is kind of a career. You go from 18 to 25, you got about 80 years left to live. So the problem isn't the money. The problem is nobody can get to the players that have been there. We don't all have to have gone to the same school, but if y'all could talk to Michigan State players and I could talk to Philadelphia players and think about it. So I want the money to keep coming. The key is now we can't stop it. A lot of guys have gotten their hands on it, men and women. So we have to now, as alumni and graduates of other schools and sports, we have to figure out a way to drive a message directly to those players. Okay. In mass. So somebody needs to hook up with a relationship with somebody who can create a YouTube channel and just get as many players on there as possible recorded, talking about the things we would say. Even if we all did our own message and post it, we got to get ahead of the money. And I'm saying that because of 30 years being in corporate America, right? Watching companies make billions and trillions of dollars and reading 10Ks and 10Qs. They message out what they're going to do before they do it. Most of our young people, no matter what ethnic background they have, if they get access to this money under 22 years old, most of them don't come from families that have a lot of money historically. So they can blow right through it. That's that side. The schools see that there's more money coming from them logos on them floors. Y'all seen them gym floors, right? That's all technology. That means, guess what? If I'm NVIDIA, I can give more money to the NCAA because I can put my chipsets in the buildings and run all those fantastic video boards they have. So the test, this is the secret. The test was let the players get the little money. The corporation's about to get the big money.
Yes, yes. And to your point, that education piece, right?
Yes, sir.
It is something that's definitely needed. And that's one of the things that got TGBA off the ground.
Yes, sir.
Was I really saw that need for the educational side, for the student athlete as well as the family. But now this thing has gotten to the point where it's so monumental in terms of the control. Now there's a power and control struggle where you have all these different entities jumping into the equation that's causing a problem.
Yeah.
You know, so, and I'm sure that we're going to be able to tackle and cover those things as we continue to dialogue.
Yes, sir.
But, you know, you got the educational side. Now you have the power structure, right, that was stemmed from the Supreme Court that caused all of this to start snowfalling, right?
Yeah.
So now NCAA and these powers that be are like, man, we losing our power and control. Now you're talking about a multi-billion-dollar industry. Now
trillion-dollar industry. Trillion-dollar industry.
Now the Supreme Court is forcing us to share our revenue, right? You know, annually on an ongoing basis. Now, I don't know if you guys are still connected with any players from 2016 and up, but there is a settlement that took place, a little under $3 billion, that they're paying back money to those athletes who were in school doing since 2016 up until this point that they have to pay.
Hey, man, they needed that. I want everybody to get everything that was due for them.
Absolutely, a part of this collective bargaining, and so it's so many pieces. Yeah, and and I see the problem, you know, on a wide scale
Much
the
wider.
issues and why it's so hard and everybody's going crazy. And you can't come to a resolution because of opinions and so on and so forth in the struggle for power. But we're going to circle back. We're going to continue to tackle all of those things. But that's one component. Is that educational pieces for sure. Yeah. Definitely for sure. So with that being said, Jelani, if you could chime in and give us your take on, how you see the NIL, the infrastructure, how things have changed, and how you feel about it, your opinion on it. Compensation for the player. Are we going to just go ahead and say this pay for play, or what? Why are we struggling or keep trying to hold on to the amateurism, title, which is truly none of that. So, and I'm sure you're aware and the Sherman antitrust and all these other things that plays a major factor in how this whole thing is going to, bring resolution to itself.
Yeah, great. Can you guys still hear me okay?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Okay, super. Yep. So, Brother Mike, you guys know everything about me is about being a historian. I take it all the way back.
And then after they break, they'll walk around.
And I know Mike doesn't realize his microphone's on.
That room. Yep.
Want me to hold up until he finishes? Yes, sir. He probably doesn't realize his mic is still live. Okay, I think he might have muted himself. But everything.
Go ahead, guys. Sorry about that.
No problem. Everything I do is from a historical perspective. So the things that I'm going to share with you to kind of broaden the discussions. I know we can't tackle all in my segment. I did jot down a few things, but everything. I'm a professor. I'm a historian.
Is Mike on?
Like Mike, and so. The first thing you should know is that one of my inspirations and mentors is a brother named Dr. Harry Edwards. Are you guys familiar with Dr. Harry Edwards?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Tony,
Cal Berkeley.
So Dr. Harry Edwards was a pioneer back in the 60s, the late 60s, organized the Olympic Games, but everybody knows that the raised fist and all of those kinds of things. And he was among the first to break through this idea of the plantation system of college athletics. And this is where I saw myself, the lane that I saw myself getting in, and why earlier we talked about, John Chaney and John Thompson and the Black Coaches Association, and beginning to understand the unfairness. And everybody today started off talking about the system, if you will, and all the things that are involved. So I'm going to give you all a little bit of a quiz since we're in here. The date. Why is this date so important? January 1st, 1863. Does that date ring a bell? January 1st, 1863.
Emancipation.
That's right. The Emancipation Proclamation. Abraham Lincoln issued that during the third year of the Civil War, declared that all enslaved people in Confederate states still in rebellion are and henceforth shall be free, immediately changing the war's purpose to include abolition. Now, this is important because what has happened is the freedom of the formerly enslaved. Now, a lot of people think that those words are inflammatory, that those words are bombastic. How could you say this? But that's really what was happening, because what the universities had done in the area of college athletics, led most importantly by the coaches, number one, the athletic directors, number two, the university presidents and all of the chancellors, number three, and then the NCAA, number four, the conglomerate, was it controlled every aspect of the lives of us as student athletes, but also our children and all that. Everything. It talked about when they could play, how they could play, what they could do, every single rule that impacts college athletics has nothing to do with the young people that find themselves on college campuses. They're all created by the adults. And think about the outbreak, the craziness that happened when Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. And guess what people were saying? And guess what they were sounding just like we were. Oh my God, we got to get control over this. And it's unfair and this, that, and the third. And there were people thinking about a variety of things. Hey, what are the formerly enslaved going to do? How can they help themselves? But the biggest issue, Tony, you mentioned the word, was control. So my initial thoughts on this situation, what's going on with NIL? If you don't look at it from the broader perspective of what America is all about, particularly the more seasoned adults, you're going to miss the picture. What do I mean in a brief nutshell? Every rule was not created by the 18, 19, and 20-year-olds. They were created by people older, and they were not created for the benefit of the 18, 19, 20-year-olds. They were created for the benefit of the adults, mostly the coaches. What you're talking about and what has happened is putting some of the power back into the hands of the oppressed. And I know people don't like those words, but that's really what it was. Ironically, they're talking about what? How do we help the institutions and the colleges? And then what I would tell people on this issue is life is cyclical, but the decision to monetize, commercialize, and basically turn college athletics into professional ranks, which is basically what y'all are talking about. Basically turning these 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds into professionals has nothing to do with the 18-year-olds. That was a decision. Nobody told them to pour all this money and all these stadiums and create all these jobs. But this is what American capitalism does. And there's some good things that come with that. Like you said earlier, billions and billions and billions of dollars are being levied in this industry, which means a lot of jobs and all those kind of things. But what you're also talking about is fairness. So as we continue to talk, I'm going to be focusing on fairness to the so-called student athlete. Even though we're talking more about the athlete than the student, a lot of my focus is going to be on the student. I'm going to talk about something that Mike was saying and some of you guys agree with. We said, man, I remember a time when a person couldn't even get money for gas. Well, we should talk about those kind of things. And then this idea of transferring. What I want you to think about, or what I want you to ponder, because this is whether we like it or not, it's going to happen, is after 1863, everybody had to think differently about things, meaning there was a pre-1863 mentality, the mentality of the people who were enslaved and how they navigated, and a post-1863 mentality, narrative. Well, it's the same when we were playing. When we were playing, Brother Mike, Big Tone, Randy, we had an idea about certain things. Now we're in the 21st century. We're going to have to rethink a lot of things, stereotypes, and that's going to be very difficult. Let me give you one example. Who said that it's bad that a 26-year-old who's enrolled in college can't play with a 19-year-old? Who said? See, in our mind, well, what, man? They a grown man playing against a kid. Well, we got in class, Tony, when you were in class, Randy, when you were in class, Mike, when you were in class, accounting 101, psychology 101, you had some 18, 19, you had some 24 and 25-year-olds in that class. What was the problem? Why is it a problem on the basketball court? Why is it a problem in robotics or a fraternity or a sorority? These are different things that we've got to think about because people have put in our minds that something's wrong with that. Another thing, I've been an admissions director. You guys know I recruited students. I'm an enrollment management professional. I'm a student life professional. You know, I'm a director of student success and retention professional. Outside of coaching, I spent most of my career in the data and in the university life. I've seen it from A to B. Tony mentioned an educational component. We're going to, through our dialogue, we're going to explore. I'm going to give you guys some meat and potatoes because that's what John Chaney and John Thompson, the black coach, that's what they were talking about when we were kind of coming through in the mid to late 80s and in the 90s. The fairness. Why are you using the SAT to even determine if a student should play or not? last point. Remember when we were kids growing up, and there was, the great Mr. Bill Russell, Havlicek, of course, Kareem, Wilt, and when they were coming through, here's what the decision that the adults made: freshmen can't play their first year.
That's it.
Why?
That's it.
Why? Who said? Because they had the power, Tony talked about, because they had the power, they could dictate policy. There was no evidence that said that. Of course, they got rid of that. And guess what? The sport did not disintegrate, but everybody was talking about, oh my God, this is going to be the end of the sports, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So as I get off my high horse, Tony, what I'm going to challenge everybody listening to your incredible podcast, or even those of us, is we have to think differently than even how we grew up. Even though our intentions are good, we're going to have to think differently about every aspect, because the United States of America and every entity that touches the United States, in this case, higher education, is compromised by capitalism, the desire, the innate desire, the insatiable desire to commercialize and monetize, meaning make a shitload of money on every aspect. They did not have to do it. They didn't have to build the big stadiums. And let me share this. Nobody's running, meaning corporate sponsors. Guess what? Nobody's running from corporate America, from colleges. They're pouring more and more money, streaming. Everybody's trying to get some of this. So what we want to focus in on is fairness, and how, as Mike mentioned, can we better prepare our students? But the sport is not burning. I know that the slave masters thought in 1863, this thing is going to burn, and no, it's going to go up, and then it's going to evolve, and it's going to get better. And our job is to see that it gets better, so that the students have every opportunity that's afforded them, just like the student who ain't playing any sports. And like I said, if a 26-year-old can sit in accounting 101 with Randy, Jelani, and Tony, and Mike, and if they can join a fraternity or a sorority at 31, if they want, if they can get in the robotics club or play in the band, and there are students like that have gone back to school, some even grandmothers, and if they want to play basketball, male or female, why shouldn't they be able to, provided that they follow the rules of the institution? And most of the time we're talking about money, we're talking about compensation, but what we're not talking about are what are the rules of the institution, because that's the governing body, not Congress, not the Senate. You don't need any people involved. Is Tony gainfully, officially enrolled student full time? Is he maintaining a 2.0 GPA? That's his contract.
That's his contract.
You can't leave early. You have a contract for the academic year.
Yep.
With the money that comes with it, then you have to stay there for that whole year. And if you don't meet the academics, if you drop courses, you're not full time, you forfeit the money. If you don't get the money, GPA, you forfeit the money. Can't transfer to any place until the academic year is over. Why isn't that the case? Because the adults have decided they're trying to make as much money as they can. So Coach Randy Monroe, if Tennessee calls you from Vanderbilt, or Coach Mike, if the University of UCLA calls you right in the middle of the semester, y'all lost in March Madness, and guess what? You going the next day. But the minute I leave, the world is going to hell. So Tony, I'm gonna shut up. I know we're going to dive into some of these things, but that's my opening diatribe.
I gotta jump in. I want to jump right in. Hold on, Tony. Hold on. One more piece, and I think you said it earlier. If you're gonna allow all the past history coaches to get the bag, right? And they done bought stuff and gave it to their families and put it away and invested it, right? You done all that. Let's start having coaches have shorter contracts. Because now if I'm a player and my coach can just jump and leave, then I'm leaving. But now if the coach get a bigger bag and all the money went to the coach, then now why are we not talking about limiting that coach's salary?
You know what, Mike? You just started something right there, because this is one of the big arguments with a lot of the coaches, right? In their unions, right? So you had so many guys decide to step off. Nick Saban, Jay Wright, Villanova, many others decided to say, look, I'm not going to be a part of this, because I lose the control. Players are not going to make more money than me. Yeah. And, I can't, foster that system that I'm accustomed to, and having that control over the players that I recruit and bring in. And the other part is the capitalism in America, the greed for money and the power and control. So the NCAA, they shot themselves in the foot when you were infringing upon the rights of the student athletes who decided to get smart and say, okay, let's come together and we're going to bring a lawsuit. So, it started with O'Bannon. You're right. O'Bannon back in the 90s. EA Sports, still in his name image.
Tarkanian. Him and Tarkanian.
Yeah, it started back then.
Yes, sir.
It just kept building, over the years from there. And, it got to the point where, okay, we're going through the local circuit courts. We're getting approved. We're now going to the state. Now we're going to the Supreme Courts. Hey, we go back. We talked about the 1800s.
Yes, sir.
Well, the Sherman Antitrust Act started back then.
Yes, sir.
Commerce and free enterprise of business and trying to control the monopolies. Well, when I look at the student athlete, they're spending 60 plus hours a week working. I mean, like hard. Yeah. And we never got a chance to receive any kind of compensation or reward. And education, is that an equal equity? To say that, all right, you got a degree, but we're going to make billions of dollars off your back. Use your name, your images,
and likeness.
We just use you. We got to use you. And how many guys that don't even graduate or even get their degree?
A lot of guys couldn't make it past that junior year.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
exactly.
I think you're going to see a lot of that now in this situation.
Yes, sir.
That's why I was saying how can you possibly graduate when you're going from school to school with three to 4 years? Right. It's just impossible to happen. And let's be honest, most of those young men are African American males. Yes, okay, we're chasing the money. All right. And once again, I understand, but we're not thinking. It goes back to the educational piece. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Yeah. How are we going to be educated? And there's some schools that are doing it, but it's not a lot of them that are doing it, that are educating their student athletes on how to manage this. Yeah. And I think I said this to you this week, Tony, that the young man from North Carolina, Trimble, okay, he was a smart young man in the sense where he took his money and he opened up a Ben & Jerry's right near the University of North Carolina. Now, to me, that's being wise with your money. Yeah. Okay. Right. Yeah. But we know a lot of youngsters aren't going to do that. Yeah.
Well, here's what's even interesting to support what you're saying, Randy. So there's massive life insurance policies that anybody with money can pay for, right? Mm-hmm. Whole life policies are investment portfolios. Right. So they don't need a financial advisor to do that. They just go to the insurance agent and say, here, put my money in a policy, sign it. Here's my beneficiary list. Put them on there. Have an attorney draw up a trust, even if it's $500,000, put it in there and then borrow a loan against it. You never lose the principal, right? Mm-hmm. So just that alone, if they just do that part right there, anybody who gets $250,000 and up, now you can say, I can go back to class and finish school. I can get my family up off my back. Right. They stop begging and everybody looking at me. I can go get my own apartment away from my family because I might not even want them to know where I live. Right. I want to put that address in that insurance policy so it pays it every month. So if I want to live with my friends for 10 years, my policy pays my rent. Right. So yes, the players have to be willing to say, somebody just give me the simplest way for my money to come back to me. And do it in ad nauseum. Right. Because I know that there's a couple programs that travel at the school level, and I don't want to put their name out there because I don't know if you want their name. So, but they have the rights to go in and talk to the athletes about financial literacy. And that's a marketed program. Right. It's sponsored by investors. Right. So how can you be transparent if you're teaching a sponsored message? Right. So if a kid just wanted to have something as simple as, I just want to buy my parents' house so I can have a house in my name, right? They got to go through somebody else to do a transaction, pay the fees, but at least they could get something. They got to get assets in their name. Right.
You're talking about making wise choices now.
Yes.
As opposed to getting the money and just spending it like
it's gonna be gone. That's the tragedy coming. Y'all know what it was like, man. When a guy went to college and played ball, none of us got no check, nothing. We came home, everybody treated us like royalty. We were able to go over our friends' houses, hang out, do everything. We couldn't go too far because we had to pat our pockets and say, I gotta get a job, right? If I didn't get to the league. So a lot of us got out and just started working, right? Grocery stores, factories, whatever it is, right? Just go get a job. Well, the trouble that young people are going to have is their social engagements and the money. I have a niece that is a soccer player at the University of Georgia. And she's in connection to a couple of the football players. They're in Miami driving sports cars with the money. So it's cool to go do it, but they spending raw post-tax money. Right. So now you're double spending. Right. It's getting tax coming to you. They give it to you once a month. Right. So now you go and burn it. Everybody cool with you for the next 5-6 years. The mental state of a young person at 30, now you talking suicide. Why? We can't wait for that because some of them going to burn right through it. Boy or girl, not going to know none of us. Ain't gonna have no way to connect to us. Ain't gonna be in a room one day by themselves. And it's gonna dawn on them. Now you're talking real mental health. Right? So yeah. So imagine now let me put a little history in that, just American side history. If slavery was what it was, none of us was allowed to be in it, but we know it was real. Imagine coming off a ship not knowing where you are. Being forced to go somewhere that you wasn't 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, right? A month ago, however long the ship traveled. Now you start being used like the young men then to create more babies. How many guys know guys that are playing ball, popping kids? Oh yeah, that's another number. So now the state gonna say, oh, you got a 2-year-old over here that's got your blood in it. So we need half that check for the next. Then you pat in your pockets talking about I ain't got it.
But see, Mike, I think the question is, what's the NCAA got to do with that? I think it's a great analogy. What was the post-enslavement situation like for the people who were marginalized and trafficked and not compensated?
That's it.
But here's what happened. Within 2 generations, we created, with the help of others who were more conscious, institutions, and we were involved in activities and engaged in activities, particularly as families, but also as communities, to train our young people how to navigate the system called America. What I hear too many people doing is taking away the ability of people to do what they want to do, and leaving that on the NCAA. You have Mike the Third, and he or she's a top level athlete. It's your responsibility. Now that doesn't take all of the responsibility off the NCAA. I think the NCAA, really not even the NCAA, the university, the institution that you have decided for your son or daughter to go to, that should be a part of why you choose that institution. Now, where Tony talks about is, we're all talking about how do we educate parents. And the second part of that, are they even willing to listen? That's a whole nother discussion.
That's the biggest question.
That's the big issue there.
In terms of educating the parents, what should you be looking for? I would say, what should you be demanding as part of the criteria by which your son or daughter wants to go to that school? And number two, you're going to release them to go to that school.
Yeah.
These are things that organizations in the community, like GBA, these are workshops and things that we can do to tell parents these. Now, we can't make them do anything. Remember, some of our people went back to the plantation, like you said, Mike, because they didn't know where to go and what to do.
Yeah.
But once we started to create avenues of education and learning, look what we've done. But what I submit to you, gentlemen, is that over the last really 30 plus years, we have allowed our sovereignty, our decision making, to be forfeited to organizations like the NCAA. We've allowed people to say, "Oh, let's get the Senate and Congress, let them get involved," which of course we already have knowledge of that. That's just going to mean them funneling more money back away from the students or the people that are the laborers, as we call them, and not where they go at. The mental health situation, you should have that high on your list. And our job is to, as we talk to parents, we should say, when you go to the school, don't just be looking for the money. You should be asking them, hey, what is your percentage of students of color, if that's important to you? What is your, remember when we were coming through, Randy, we talked about Dr. Lapchick.
How many graduated your school?
Dr. Lapchick had all the data from Northeast University about graduation. Nobody's talking about graduation and retention because you know why? That's not important to them. And I'm not mad at them because we all know Bill Gates and others left school after so many years to go pursue their career. And you're in college to generate the skills needed for your profession. So I don't have any problem with that. Now, you can't come back and complain and cry. And to date, I'm not hearing a lot of people come back and complaining. Now, those who get a 3, if you can't live for the rest of your life on $3 million, shame on you. These institutions and these professions don't have an obligation for you to help you generate generational wealth. That's something that you do. Your job is to negotiate, what you can. So I'm just saying that we've got to be careful because a lot of the discussion is going to, there's a problem with a kid transferring to 5 schools. Well, again, as an admissions director, trust me, I used to get applicants and they didn't transfer from 4 schools and did nobody say a thing. And if they wanted to join a fraternity, did nobody say nothing. They wanted to get in the robotics club, did nobody say nothing. You know what I'm saying? It's only when they start making money. And I'll say this, Randy and you guys, Mike, you remember when, Rick's on that, the NCAA told us.
Prop 48.
They said we could not have a job. While you were playing.
Couldn't have a job. Couldn't work.
Now, they might have tried to pretend like it was for our best interest, but really they had no business in there as long as we were going to class when we were supposed to.
And kept our grade point.
What I did with the local car dealership down the road, if he wanted to pay me just to stand in front of that room, so be it. Why couldn't I sell my sneakers? They're my sneakers. See, what I'm saying is that they got involved in things that they should never have gotten
been involved
in. They should have been focused on competition, making sure the game, 3-point shots, 24-second clock, 35-second clock, size of the court, all of those kinds of things were within their purview, setting up the tournament and all that stuff. But what we did, or the society did, is they allowed them to go outside. This is what happens, and this is why enslavement of human beings, American style, was so harmful. It wasn't simply about the unpaid labor sector. The whole narrative about the humanity of the people who were being exploited. You guys know how Chris Webber and them, because these are people that are our peers and some of the guys we coach, how negative the perception was about what these guys were doing and how awful they were. You know, the Reggie Bush lost his Heisman Trophy. And not that it was bad, how horrible of a human being he was for accepting money.
What's the running back for Ohio State?
Correct. So
tortured him.
The power was not just in the unpaid labor. It was they controlled everything.
That
the young man from UCLA, Tony, that you talked about on one of your podcasts that I was on, that went ahead and had to sue, a college basketball for their NIL rights. And those of us that played, or were in the NBA during that time when your brothers Sean was in and Eric, and they had to sue the league because they were going back and putting the EA Sports and all these video games, and they were showing these guys, but these guys couldn't make any money from it. So
Sean's image was on the video game.
On the video game.
Couldn't get nothing.
So they were getting
That's what it was. And you know what, man? You hit it, boom, right on the head when it comes to the exploitation and that part about the portal. And you talking about transferring. Now, the focus has always been, since this NIL thing, came about, was always on major sports of the majority of Black players. Let's call it for what it is: football, basketball. You don't hear the other sports, being talked about as much. Now,
we know that there's money going in soccer, lacrosse, volleyball. Everybody's getting that.
We have guys and girls, whoever, transferring on an ongoing basis over the period of, every year, and it's being talked about. And it's a problem. It's a huge problem for the coaches and for everybody, right? Jewel, you mentioned earlier, how about those other things that are considered sports? The chess team. You might be in the band. You might be on one of the debate team or any one of these organizations. Those guys, they get money to go to school too. They transfer. They've been doing that for years. No one said anything.
Scholarships out, Tony. Scholarships out the wazoo. So what if they transfer? Now, as all of us have coached, and let's be honest, we know the chaos that it causes for us. Because we are interested in developing the young kids and people of African descent in the United States and knowing the importance of the right kind of education and training so that when you get out there, like most of us are going to get out there, we want you to be prepared. So, but that's a different story. That's us creating these organizations, creating these podcasts, creating these forms by which we can educate parents and put on them, and then they make the decision. But, those kinds of things are not really the duty. I think that they have an obligation. I really do. But it shouldn't matter. I understand, man, Notre Dame, just using them as an example, in Texas, and the Ohio State University. Man, they got money out the wazoo. Okay? They got money out the wazoo.
$90 million.
Is it going to be unfair for them who have histories and money out the wazoo versus, say, a St. Joe's or LaSalle, a Davidson, a Winthrop? Yeah, well, guess what? That's y'all's problem. That should not impact the student athlete. On the flip side, let's talk about also what's good. All we're seeing, and unfortunately, it's really great. We're seeing it in March Madness. We're watching these young men and now these young women, and we're listening to now the narrative. And guess what they've been saying right now with their conference tournaments and what we'll be hearing over the March Madness. Oh, Tony Coleman started at Division II Philadelphia Textile, where he was freshman of the year, second team All-American. His sophomore year, he was first team All-American. And now he's at the University of Texas. He would have never got that opportunity. So there's so many great athletes out there, and many of them were laboring as 9th man, 10th man, 11th man, 12th man, 13th man on the bench of the Ohio State because they couldn't transfer. Or if they did, they were talked about being negatively, or they had to sit out a year. All I'm saying is that it seemed like the world to the power was coming to an end on January 1st, 1863. You couldn't have told them that it was doomsday, the apocalypse, and guess what happened? People were freed and began to move about and exercise their freedom, justice, and liberty.
Yep.
Today, athletes have that opportunity. How can we help them better navigate that? Is really, Tony had, I don't want to talk about the SCORE Act, but we can talk about that as well. But we just got to be careful that we're not given the power from parents and students to make their own decisions to the NCAA, because they're going to tell the coaches, you can make as much as you want. And they're going to tell the players, but you can't. And that's not right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Before we and hold that thought right there, because that's a really, really good point, Jelani. Before we attack the SCORES Act that's in legislation right now, waiting for a passing to be pushed through the House. Let's take a moment. Rick just joined us, and he had a game earlier today, so he couldn't come on at 10, but he did get a chance to check in. It's good to see you, man. And the reason why I wanted to pause a little bit to let you guys know that Rick was on, and he's currently a parent who have a son playing in the Big Ten at the University of Minnesota. He's a freshman. He's doing well. Kai Shinholzer out there at University of Minnesota. And so I know he's working with things firsthand, at that level, because even now, many of these power conferences are talking about, and they're debating whether or not they should go independent because of the fact that revenue sharing and stipulations from legislation is forcing them to pay out $20.5 million and share that with the student athletes. And it's supposed to be an ongoing, increasing thing over the period of a decade or so. And, along with that, back pay, right, for those athletes from 2016 all the way up. And then as we continue to travel on, if I'm the major sport in that particular power conference, I'm carrying, the weight for most of the other sports, which they want all the universities to carry, at least 16 sports, right? So who's financing those other sports? Now, what's happening is when it comes to budgets and deficits, those sports are being cut. So that's an argument. That's a fight. There's a lot of other things going on behind the scenes as, between the universities and the presidents. That's why they brought the guy, Charlie Baker, in, who's now the president of the NCAA, who's a former legislator and governor and, a politician, to counteract with all the politicians and things now with this whole situation to control and bring the power back to the infrastructure where it was, years ago, before 2019, 2020, when all this stuff really started kicking in. So before we talk about the SCORES Act, which is the Student Compensation Opportunity through Rights and Endorsements Act, that protects student athletes and help them, with the Sherman Antitrust Acts, is up for a vote to say, look, we're no longer, going to allow student athletes to have the control to make their own deals and make as much money as they want, whether it's in-house or third party. We want to control that. So that's something that's up. But before we do that, Rick, I just want to give you the platform, man, for a minute. to talk about, this NIL thing. There's anything that you want to bring up about the Big Ten or any thing that, you're dealing with personally and how you see a few things as a parent with a son playing in, a big major conference at Division I basketball.
First of all, good morning, fellas. Sorry I got here a little late. I had some other stuff I had to take care of, but I'm glad I, joined in. Good to see you guys too. First couple things. I know I joined in late just to catch up, find out what you guys were actually hitting on and talking about. I know Tony and I have been recently kind of brainstorming here and there about what's happening, and it's like, I'm as a parent, I'm totally in the mix. Like I'm in it. I'm not on the outside looking in. I have a kid that's in it. So, for me, it's just more of trying to educate myself and understand, the whole landscape of how all this stuff works. Because, from the times when we were growing up playing, all we did was play. We just played. We didn't have to worry about anything else. Now the landscape is a little different because there's so much involved. There's so much money involved, with these young kids. And the one thing I notice is that now, because, the Scorers Act, or people are starting to talk about, they deem it as an issue that these kids are now making money, where I don't see a problem with that. And we understand why. We all understand why. Because if the tables were turned, if it was a different group of people, making money and for whatever hockey, soccer, whatever they were doing, it wouldn't be a problem at all, because they know now, by these kids making all this money, this gives them a leg up. This helps them, this helps them towards their goal of generational wealth, of which other people have been experiencing generational wealth their entire lives, and generations. So now it's our turn to be able to, to capitalize on the generational wealth. But now that's a problem. It's a problem. They don't want to see us. They don't want to see us get ahead. They want to keep it back. And I share that. One thing I've noticed that has been going on for years is that the one way they say most Black people of color, the way they get ahead and create generational wealth is through mainly two avenues. That's through entertainment and sports. That's it, entertainment and sports. So now we have that platform of the entertainment and sports, and now they're trying to put a cap on it. Because now they see, you have some folks who say, hey, I paid for education for my kids. My kids went to college, and we worked hard to get where we are. It's unfair that these other kids are getting NIL money and they didn't work as hard. And again, it's because of, the way the landscape is. It's kind of like, oh man, they're rising. They're gonna reach these goals. They're gonna create generational wealth. So we have to figure out how to kind of combat that and kind of hold them down. So that's like the biggest thing for me, is just kind of like, helping these parents understand, helping the kids understand, helping these kids understand that, when they do make the money, don't go out and buy yourself $100,000 car. Don't go out and buy all these clothes and all this crazy stuff, because this is money that's being handed to these young kids, 19, 20, 21. It's like life-changing events, but they need people, in their lives. They need people, in their circle that kind of helps them navigate, through those things, to help them. Because you don't want to, I always say this, any given time, as for all of us, that ball stops bouncing. It's going to stop one day. Any given time, you're one injury away. Anything can happen. Anything can happen. So you want to, any monies that these young folks are making, or the opportunities to make, they want to capitalize on it. Start a retirement plan when you're 20 years old. Create an LLC. when you're 20 years old. Things that I know for me growing up, things that didn't even exist.
Yeah.
That
You
didn't
couldn't do
exist at all.
Couldn't do it.
So,
Yeah.
so
And we
these are
and we're not talking, we're talking less than 10 years, 12, 15 years ago, right? I mean, there's just certain stuff that we just couldn't do. Something you said that I wanted to acknowledge. So as a dad, having a son playing, my brother was Sean Resper. So, he went through Michigan State, did his thing. And so I watched my dad and mom do it off of $45,000 a year salary, right? Raising 3 kids, getting us through. What I think the young people have to understand is all the money belonged to the same person that created us all, right? So they got to understand how to focus on how long do you really want to live, right? If they get that, the first thing they got to get is just a life insurance policy, right? They can borrow against the life insurance policies now because they let them go to more people. These same policies everybody want to brag about in these commercials, they weren't available to none of us 25 years ago. You couldn't even get these policies, right? So insurance companies are the biggest banks in the world. So they know how to play the game. That's why they have all the vultures around guys. You have 4, 5 financial advisors and a friend of a friend and their son hanging out with your 22-year-old that's getting $500,000. They help them party, man. You got to realize they run the schemes around these players too, man. Hey, come to my area. My friend got a mansion and you can spend your money over here. So they blowing money, having a good time, and don't even understand how to save and use the money to get access to more money and slow down.
Right.
See, everything now, I walked on to Michigan State. So I watched the speed of Sean Resper get recruited, right? The speed of a player being recruited. Once you on campus, you got to put up or shut up. So all that nonsense is out the door. Now, guess what you don't have? Time to do research about things that we talking about. Real adult life things.
Well, you know what,
So,
Mike? Going to what Rick is saying and everybody, there's never been a greater time.
oh yeah, this is the greatest time.
America's not called the land of guarantees.
Yeah,
It's called the land of what?
opportunity.
Opportunity. And that's all that we wanted. James Brown had a song, I don't want nobody
Yep,
to give me nothing.
yep.
Just open up the door and I'll get it myself.
Myself. That's
And
it.
so what we don't want is all this mumbo jumbo, to your point, where people are saying, oh, well, we're looking. Remember, we talking about we weren't allowed to work. Rick wasn't allowed to work when he was
Yeah,
playing. Why?
yeah,
Why couldn't we work? You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
Well, we're looking out for you. They said, we're looking out for your best interest. We want you to be able to focus in on your studies. In the meantime, these coaches are pulling in whatever.
Yeah.
So we don't want to curtail the opportunity. What we do want are families like Rick and others, grandkids, grandparents, like you guys are saying, who are now entering this arena and they have a product that can generate revenue for them to sustain their lives, and for some of them to do even more.
Yeah.
We need to continue to do is to figure out ways to help them, as Rick was saying, not get pimped, not
Yep.
get exploited,
Yep.
how to leverage their opportunity.
That's
We
it.
don't want nobody taking away any opportunities that they have.
That's
It's
it.
our responsibility to help them leverage that. And you leverage that through what? Through history. Okay,
Yeah.
what happened yesterday that maybe we didn't do so good, so that we can put those in place today
That's it.
for the betterment tomorrow. Because I think it was you or Tony talked about, or Rick talked about entertainment and athletics, which for a long time, the narrative were those are all, man, that ain't no real viable education or real viable industries, accounting or other. No, these are $1 trillion industries that take
Yes.
expertise to get
Yeah.
into. They're every bit as viable as a person going to be a doctor or going to be a lawyer or whatever. And that's why you're there. You're there to exploit and learn your gifts and to be able to apply them in
That's
the
it.
industry
That's
where
it.
it fits. So in the 21st century, we're now accepting, we weren't in our day, but we're now accepting the reality that sports and entertainment are viable industries to really take care of yourself and your family.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
how do we get the best out of them? And all I'm saying is that even though things seem like they're chaotic, I think all of you guys will see over the next 4.5 weeks all these games on TV.
Yes, sir.
What we're going to see are thousands of young men and young women with what? An opportunity. And what I love even more about the transfer portal, even though I know it causes chaos for the coaches, that's your problem, coach.
Yeah.
You got to figure out how to coach them.
Deal
I
with
love
it.
the fact that a young man or a young woman could start at NAIA or Division III, and they killed it there. Now they can
Move up.
They don't gotta wait. They can get an NIL deal.
Yep.
Look at how many some of these young men and women now are in the pros. They would
Yeah.
have never gotten those opportunities.
Yeah.
So when one door closes, and that's one of the great things about America and opportunity. When one door closes and it seems
Another one
like
opens.
chaos, another one opens. Like Rick is saying, as a parent, we want to be able to support those parents because here's the deal: if your son or daughter wants to get their college degree, they will get it. Nothing's going to stop them from getting it if they
Yeah.
want it. But let's be
Yeah.
honest, some people are not really there to get their college degree. They're
Yeah.
there for the 2 or 3 years to play ball. God bless them. If you don't get your degree, that's on you. Some people are there, and by the time they get to be the junior year, Fifth Avenue Sachs or Smith Barney or somebody and recruited them out of the computer science or whatever division, and they're now working on Wall Street. There's a ton of people like that. Nobody begrudges them. But like Rick said, and many of others said, because these sports are starting to look, or they ain't starting, they've been looking, like the brown folk is gaining power over it. Well, now, so we're ignoring all the other sports, which, by the way, we're paying amateurs in high school, hockey,
Sir.
baseball, a long time before we even got into this space. And so these people and these institutions today are major research institutions because of our kids running touchdowns, knocking balls over the fence, running the 4 3s or the 100-yard dash, or scoring 50 points a game. We've got to make sure that we safeguard opportunity. That's the key. And work with the parents that are looking for some support.
Man, you hit it right on the head there. And Rick, we definitely want to dialogue about this a lot more because that's one of the goals of TGBA is to connect with the families and the parents of these student athletes because with the Scores Act coming down the pike to try to disrupt all of this that we've been talking about, the portal, the ability to be compensated to make money, right? So if, in fact, and I think it's going to be really hard for, legislation to be passed on this bill that's going to give them full control again to start, deciding how much money the student athlete can make, if you can even make any outside third-party NIL deals outside of the institutions. What's going to happen with these conferences, the revenue sharing and all these kinds of things. We got Division I, Division II, Division III. At the D1 level, we have the mid-majors who are right in the middle that's struggling, right? There's a lot of things going on there. So there's so many components, that's happening, in the infrastructure that we got to make sure that, as Jelani was saying, we have to protect those opportunities, man, for the student athletes, for these families, because they want to take it away from them, man. And I definitely don't want to see that happening. These guys, when I say these guys, I'm talking about the institutions and, some of these legislators, they are totally against guys like the agents and all these other, outside third parties and that are giving, monies to these student athletes who are using them to endorse their products and services so that they can make and monetize more money off of, right? So,
hey, I want to add something. I want to add
those
something there to you, Tony.
agents, okay, those agents are getting like 20%, which is
Yes,
unheard
sir.
of.
Yes,
It's
sir.
unheard of when it comes to
Unheard
an
of.
agent, percentage that he receives off of an athlete he represents. 20%. So they hate them guys. I mean, with it all said, you talk to one of those ADs or the presidents of those conferences, man, they don't like those guys at all. They don't like the collectives. They want to get rid of the collectives. They don't like none of them because they're infringing and they're disrupting what they want to control, right?
That's it.
For their future, anticipations for their revenue. And so, we had a crossroad here. And, I understand that there needs to be some type of control and rules, right? I agree there need to be some rules in place, but we can't give, the full reign back to an organization to just shut everybody off and control what you can do, what you can't do in terms of monetizing when you are the product. That goes against every business entity in America. If there's regulations for every business in America when it comes to e-commerce and how everything is stipulated when it comes to labor laws and using people for nothing, then there's a problem. The average student athlete that plays in a major college or D1, D2, or D3, they're working more hours per week than the average American that has a 40-hour week. They're putting in 60 plus hours. They're in the gym, they're training, they got to study, they got to do all these kinds of things, mental and physical things that encompass a lot of hours, a lot of time. And for so many years, they've been exploited to the point where, the college degree it's not enough, in my opinion. That's not enough equity. It's not guaranteed that you're going to graduate and get a job. What are you graduate, making 55K? Which this is where people are starting at. But how much are they making off of you during the course of the time that you spend at that institution? So we got to safeguard those opportunities, as Jelani alluded to, and Rick is in it, and Mike, you make some great points, man, about the educational piece and how all that stuff interacts with each other, and everybody's coming in trying to steal a piece of the pie.
Yeah,
because
man.
Yeah.
Hey,
Rick,
Rick, could you talk about, if you can go back a few years, your sons, I remember watching through you, them kind of coming through 7th and 8th grade. And then all of a sudden, I'm sure the letters started coming in and the phone calls and texts. Could you talk a little about that process that you and your wife were going through? If you were feeling any kind of pressure, were there people, calling you, trying to represent your sons and all that? Could you share some of that, like what it was really like going through that? And then maybe any advice that you may have given your sons.
Yes, sir.
In terms of how to deal with that as a family. Did he not hear me? Or we may got a bad connection.
Yeah, I think
it's a bad connection.
It's a bad connection, and he's muted.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Have him, Rick, if you can hear us, there you go. If he can hang up and dial back in.
But just Tony, I wanted to dial in on the score until Rick comes back. And just what you had sent out. Which
I put some in the chat if you guys could hear me. That information, you guys can save that, and then if you have questions, call me afterwards. Like education from organizations like the ones I put in there, Tony, I'll have those guys be able to talk to you, and you can ask them all the questions you want as well.
Okay.
But Tony, can you still hear me?
Yeah. Rick is back.
Rick's back.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Rick, did you hear my
question? I missed some of that question you had. What was it again?
Yeah, so Rick, the question I was asking, excuse me, was you were in it, really since fifth, sixth, seventh grade, your kids had shown some ability. By the time they get into high school now, I'm thinking that you guys are starting to get calls and texts and letters and so as parents, what kind of pressure, if any, were you feeling? What were some of the things that you were looking out for that were important to you as a parent? What were some of the things that you knew you had to stay away from? Things that you might have been telling your boys about, look, because they were getting some publicity. Like, walk us through, if you can, some of the things that were going on as your sons were ascending, and particularly your son that's now at Minnesota, because he's now considered one of the top prospects and going to a school with a high reputation. What was that like for you and your wife?
Well, I think, let me go back where, we all played hoops. We belong in like this, the culture of like the Philly area of basketball. And, we all have different connections and resources. And sometimes you put in all of, you put in your trust in the people that or the people that's in that circle. But sometimes those people do not have the exact same goals that you may have for your kid. And I learned that along the way, because a lot of people are out to get what they can that works for them. So what I started doing is kind of understanding the landscape and the situation of how, what does that look like as far as recruiting and as far as like, preparing yourself to, playing AAU and preparing yourself to play at the next level. So I started educating myself about it, just speaking to different people. I spoke to just multiple people, and I just kind of pieced it all together. And for me, that was just more the education part, where I know a lot of parents, they don't do that. They rely on the handlers or the people to take care of those things for them. So then they trust these people. And then they don't know sometimes what these people are doing behind the scenes or exploiting their kids or taking advantage of it. And they don't know that. They don't know what's happening. So I took it upon myself just to learn it, understand it, learn it. And when I did that, I just kind of shared like some of the information with my family, with my kids, and my kids knew, like, hey, if someone calls you, if an adult, I had an issue with an adult calling my 16 and 17-year-old son. I had an issue with that. So I always share with my kids, like, if someone calls you, give them my phone number. Give them my phone number, because when you speak to a 16, 17-year-old, you can tell them anything. They don't know, so I had them, give them my phone number. And it's funny, a high percentage of the times when my kids gave these guys their phone number, I never heard from them. I never heard from these guys. So I said, okay, that's how they play this game. They want to go after the young kids, the single parent, homes where the parent don't really know anything. Or there were times where my kids would be at a game, an AAU game or a high school game. And these adults would approach my kid, and my kid would say, hey, my dad is over there. And those guys would never come and talk to me. They would just walk away, and I guess that's not a kid, that we can really, and I said, well, I thought that was a problem, because everyone talks about they're in it for the kids. Everybody, I hear that so many times. I'm in it for the kids. But if you're in it for the kids, let's do this collectively. Let's do this as a parent and as you're a person that's in the AAU world, the college world. Talk to the parents, educate the kids, educate the parents. Let's work collectively so we can help these kids, because these kids are young kids. I've seen so many young kids who put themselves in a situation that sometimes is not a good situation. They get this money, they get all this stuff, and when all that money is gone, all the people that were in their circle, they're no longer there. They are back to square one. And these kids become very comfortable with where they were. So that little bit of time when they're playing hoops and playing football and they think they're on top of the world for those 3-4 years, when those 3-4 years are over, they're right back to where they were before they had all that fame and fortune and all that stuff. So I shared that, with my kids. I talked to them about that because I share with them, like, basketball for my sons are just a vehicle. It's just a vehicle in life of just something you want to do. And then you let it take you where it takes you, wherever that goes. I don't know where it goes. Let it take it where it takes you. It could be something where you might want to explore and try to, all kids growing up, they want to be in the NBA, they want to be in the NFL. That's your goal. That's great. But the reality kicks in. So sometimes people are more successful that are not on the court or on the field, because the longevity kicks in. You're around it. You love the sport. You could be a coach, a manager, an agent, or whatever. You could be whatever you want to be, So I shared that with them of like, there's so much other things you can do. Like my older son decided he goes to Howard University. He decided, you know what, Dad, I don't want to play basketball. When he graduated high school, I said, okay, fine. So he wanted to go to Howard. He said, I just want to be a student. So he's a finance major. He's doing investing. He's doing finance. But my younger son said, hey, I still want to take this opportunity to play. So what we did was we created an LLC for them called the Shinholster Enterprise. So one is actually playing the sport. The other one is building like a business plan for when he graduates. Like, hey, my brother and I, this is what we're going to do. This is our goal. This is what we're trying to do. Because again, sometimes with that money that these kids get, it provides them opportunities. It provides them some type of financial freedom. It provides them if you think about it, I think you hit this earlier, Jewel. Most kids, when you go to college, the purpose of going to college is get an education. Once you get an education, you graduate school, you want to get a decent job and become a good member of society. You want to be able to make money or make a way because you had your college degree or your certificate. What's happening is these kids are getting the money while they're in college now. So that's a different thing. So now they're getting their money in college. So by the time they do graduate, they already have the financial means. Now they're trying to figure out how to sustain it, how to build businesses, how to, if you're in the real estate or whatever you're in, the money is already there. So, and that's some of the things that, my kids and I talk about, and my wife and I, we keep our circle very tight because what was happening is once my kids started playing, I started hearing from people I never even heard of before. They're coming, they're knocking, they're calling because for them, there's an opportunity for them. But I'm like, well, what could you do for us? And I listen. I just listen to everybody. I listen to what they say. Some people follow up. We return calls. Some people I never heard from them again. But I understand. So I'm in that stage now where I'm in daddy mode, where I am in protection of my kids. I protect them. Hey man, anybody that calls you about something, anybody that reaches out, send them to me. Have them call me. And then we'll have a meeting where I'll put my kid and my wife, put both my kids on the call so we all can be a part of whatever meetings or whatever somebody's trying to spiel to us, So I'm in that protection mode at all times because they exploit kids like crazy, man. And I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
Yeah. There's you said it, all of us have been coached before. You guys heard the phrase coach the coach, right? So even, having a dad on the phone, having an active, player situation where money can be here or there, like all the home coaching, a lot of what happens, and Dad, you may be rare, but not as rare as we think. Some parents don't want to hear it. If you want, like your example, this recording, you could chop that part up and Tony could push it out there. There'd be 100,000 parents would be like, he don't know what he's talking about. So there is a level of, because think where the athletes are coming from. Everybody's parents ain't together, right? You're dealing with circumstances where sometimes there's an aunt or godparent or somebody that took care of the kid and that's not even a parent. So like you said, they're calling and they'll keep calling because at the end of the day, it's already been informed at the corporate level of investment firms that the money filters down and comes right back out. So all they gotta do is just wait for a kid to want to take a trip somewhere and say, "Hey, mom, dad, we want to take y'all on a fancy trip on a helicopter, and we pay for the whole thing, and y'all come with us," right? All that stuff becomes a bill. They'll charge you for that. So see, some of the kids don't realize they'll get invited to a party, and then they end up paying for the party.
That model that Rick and his wife and his family actually went through during that whole recruiting process is the blueprint.
Yes,
and
sir. That's it.
I say that because when it comes to that whole process where your kid is being recruited, it's not only the kid that's being recruited, it's the entire family that's impacted about this whole thing.
Yeah, the value systems. Yeah.
So when it comes to AAU traveling and all that kind of stuff, parents are spending all this money to travel, hotels, to play in these tournaments. And then one of the things that I really hate, I don't like, I felt bad for a lot of parents because I travel those circuits during the AAUs and go watch those tournaments. And the parents are telling me that not only are they paying for hotels and food and everything like that for their kid, they charge them to come to the game.
Yep.
They charge them to go into the game to watch their own kid.
Watch their own kid.
Mm-hmm.
They paid all this money for the team. I was like, man, this is absolutely crazy. So I actually feel for the parents, in that regard. And I wish that there was something that I could do to alleviate that. But it goes back to what we were saying earlier, is that everyone is trying to monetize and make money. So these guys are putting together these tournaments. They're trying to maximize and monetize as much revenue as they possibly can. And they see that people are going to pay it. Most parents, when it comes to their child, they don't care what the price is. It's like, whatever the price is, I'm just going to pay it. Oftentimes, they're not thinking budget-wise in terms of being good financial managers. They just thinking, man, this is my kid. I just got to do this for my kid.
And that's why what you guys are doing at TGBA, Tony, is so important. And I admire what you've been doing the last 10, 15 years with your experience as a professional athlete, but also as a high-level college athlete, and you're coaching and having forums like this. Because what we don't want is to curtail opportunity. The Dapper Dan, all these things. These were opportunities people saw, and there are some good things that happen with, these tournaments and things like that. How can we help parents be better stewards of their time and money? You're right, Tony. And I think, Randy, you when you were really at the super high level, but you're now back in high school coaching, and firsthand the pressure, or at least the perceived pressure that, my son or my daughter's got to play in these AAU, and so they're marshaling up all of their money, because the perception is that, unlike when we were growing up where they had to go through this coach or that coach, that they now have to go through the AAU. I say that opportunity is cyclical. We've gotta, because remember, like Tony, what you said, 2019, 2020, we're only in 26. We're talking about less than 10 years. So everything kind of spikes, but then it kind of flattens out to where more reasonable thinking. And like I said, when one door closes, another door opens. That's the great thing about, capitalism in America, is that there's an opportunity out there. Tony, you said something earlier about conferences now thinking about revenue sharing. I think you mentioned that there are some thoughts about maybe changing the dynamics. That's the horror, but the great thing. Let me give you one example. Besides the greed that we see conferences doing, pilfering and destroying rivalries of other conferences. We see like the SEC taking people's teams, the Big Ten taking people's teams. What does this mean for the Winthrops and the Davidsons, the so-called mid-majors, and all of these things? Well, it's going to get bad in the beginning because they feel, and understandably so, that they need to be a part of these things. But just like the NFL and the AFL, the ABA and the NBA, where somebody said, you know what, I'm going to go off. Opportunities are going to come for other institutions to create the kind of conference tournaments that they want. Yes, maybe the NIT, which used to be the big dog when we were children, and the NCAA kind of just took it over, and the NIT is passe. But the greed is going to force an opportunity in other areas. And then I'll end with this, Rick. I love what you were saying also about, and I'm a product of exactly what you're saying. A little peanut head African boy, born in Media, Pennsylvania, who, like everybody else, had aspirations of being a professional athlete. And all of us on this line were not just good athletes, we were damn good athletes.
Yeah.
But that path did not lead us
Yeah.
to, professional sports.
Yep.
But because we got the certificate that Rick mentioned, or the degree that Rick mentioned, we didn't. And that's what our message needs to be. You never know where you'll find yourself if you stay the course. And America can make you act and react quicker than you want to react. In 2001, I'm going towards my doctorate. I'm traveling in Cuba. I'm in Africa, every other year, because I'm thinking, my NBA career at 5'10" down in my 30s, forget it. I ain't never going to be in the league.
Yeah.
But next thing you know, an opportunity opens up with the Sixers. And because, like Rick said, I had all these degrees and I stayed the course, kept my nose clean, and had that background, I find myself in the NBA as an executive, pursuing a lifelong dream. Meeting, your homie. By the way, Eric said, "What's up?" Eric, Kembe, and as a matter of fact, I just went back a month or so ago for their 25th reunion of when they went to the finals. You know what I'm saying? And that, like Rick said, how far can we take it? We want to use it as a vehicle. Rick used the proper term as a vehicle. Now, what is our responsibility? We've got to continue to fight on our end to remind parents who can be lured, coerced into what? Show me the money. And it's totally understandable when you ain't really got no money. And somebody offer Junior or the fifth, 3 million, 1 million, 600,000,
500,000.
and of course you're going to be swayed by it. We've got to continue to have forums like this through TGBA. We've got to, beat the bushes. As a parent, Rick, I'm sure you shared with other parents. Most important, Rick said something that was so important. This is the last thing I'm going to say on this piece. Rick said that him and his wife sat down with their children at the dinner table, whatever, and they began to craft what we want to achieve with this. This is the critical part. I don't need NCAA to do that for me.
No.
I don't need Jelani to do that for me.
No.
I don't need Coach Randy, Mike, Tony. We do this as a family. This is what we want to achieve. And that's what we want to tell a parent. You've got to know what you want or have an idea of what you want so that the money just allows you to make it happen on a larger scale. But if you are a piece of paper in the windstorm of America, you will get blown all around there. And remember, we can't save everybody because, like Rick was saying, and Mike, you were saying, is you can go out and give young people and parents all the information that you want to give them. But some of them, it's just not going to work. Just like
a lot of them.
And Randy, you can probably talk about your experience now that you're back in high school and what, as a coach, what you're facing with people coming in your ear and stuff like that.
Well, a lot of them won't listen or do what Rick did with his family because they get caught up in the process. So they don't listen to. Sometimes guys like us become corny because they're enamored by Coach Izzo coming into the home, or they're enamored by Coach Krzyzewski or this guy coming in, and they miss the point. They miss it totally. And what happens is they start listening to what people what they want to hear. And so as a result of that, that's when bad decisions get made. And they get caught up in the process. And sometimes you have kids going to schools that haven't even visited the school.
Yeah.
They'll make a commitment, like Rick was saying. His kid's 16 years old, and somebody's calling the house and talking to the kid, but they're not talking to the parent, or they're talking to an influencer or
Yeah.
influencers
Yeah.
who can get to that kid and
Yeah.
sway that kid,
Yeah.
and so that's where a lot of the problems come in. But like you said, Joel, you're not going to turn everybody, you're not going to sway everybody. So the ones that you can connect with and help
Yeah.
them out,
Yeah.
that's what you do.
Yeah. Rick, I don't know if you got a chance to see it. I put in the chat a couple of names, but I'll get those to Tony. The reason I did that while we were all on this, because obviously as a parent, watching you, hearing you just in this camera setting, there's information that's at the IRS level that you want your sons to know about. Like an LLC, just pure information, it caps the benefit at $45,000 annually. So if your kid makes $200,000, $80,000, 100, there's no more tax benefit. An S corp is actually that's what NIL is for. You become a branded entity. So I might be Michael Respert Incorporated. It's an S corp. Now I can create holding companies and things, put my car in it, put my couch in it. I don't have to buy nothing in my name. I can buy everything with that company and write it all off: apartment, house, car, etc. Well, the one thing that happens is people think of right now money. So they just start thinking of, where do I put the money to spend it right now? Versus, it never changed. I was mentioning earlier, insurance companies, they're the oldest banks on the planet, no matter what level. So you can bankroll a kid's money in an insurance policy and fund the S corp, even if the funding was $10,000 a month, right? So now that money comes automatically. You can't make it go up or down. You can tell it, leave it right here at the percentage of the payout is 10%. Leave it right here. I get no more for the next however long I'm alive. So now that money's growing. Whether I struggle to be a good husband, boyfriend, get a job, whatever it is, when I stop playing, if I'm the player, I want room to learn. Like, most of our children don't know how to internationally travel. We're in the middle of a global war, right?
Right.
So there's educational things they have to know about why these countries are at war before the Bible, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's things that parents like you guys are doing that tap in and try to have subject matter that's outside of the US. There are so many of us that could have lived in Canada and lived like kings the last 20 years. It's just been cold, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or lived down in the islands for the past 20 years. We be straight, right? Nobody was telling us we could go anywhere. Now, kids that go to Medellin, Venezuela, Costa Rica, they can go everywhere with that money. They're missing the point of, you're going to a place that has deep history. You don't have to come back and deal with the nonsense of America. So if you say, wait a minute, I got $400,000 from college. This is the player now. $400,000 from college, and my mom and dad is Rick. Rick's my dad. I'm gonna say, Dad, my friend's going down to this place, this island, whatever. I want to go, but I want to go because of business, Dad. What business can we do down there in that island so that you, Mom, my brother, my sister, so all of us can go visit down there and we can have some equity in that land, in that country? Most parents
Mm-hmm.
don't even know how to have that ear to that child asking them that. They can go on YouTube. Hey, Mom, Dad, we can. So it's encouraging them to use all the tools. If Rick was my dad and I grew up with a cell phone, I know how to use a cell phone. So I'm probably going to come to him multiple times saying, Dad, here's my wish list. Here's my vision board, right? Now, if the young person puts a vision board together, that can include the parents, but it takes the pressure off of the parents touching that money. So teaching them vision boards and things like that, like, that's real stuff that we all learn going through college and working without NIL. A simple vision board, this wall behind me, if I put 20 pictures up there, and every time I saw one of you guys as my mentors, I'm going to ask you, hey, what's really in that picture? Am I committing myself to a bad object? Am I buying something that's going to depreciate? Am I talking to people I need to talk to? How do I grow? How do I date? Like, I'm going to come to real questions with you. So we got to make sure the players understand what's on their vision board. What are you really thinking about before you get a check somewhere? Right now, if a parent has to manage that player, that's what we as a group, we can extract that information, post it back so parents can read that. That's a way to do it now. We could all interview, use AI to take everything we say and publish it as like an instruction manual. And just have a bunch of parents like Rick put their 2 cents in there. Right? That's how you really got to look at action, like today action. A storyboard we all can record in. AI will convert that information. It'll come out as instructions and it's free. And just make sure parents have access to it. We ain't got to meet them. They ain't got to know who we are. That's the power of it. Don't put your face and name on nothing. Publish it. Put it out there. Tony, you can organize it, and every day you can put information out there on the site. That's where now Rick's story becomes real, right? Because the same books we read in history class, those are real people. So we're making history by having parents do what he's doing. I hope your boys know how powerful that is that you guys did that for them. So congratulations on that too.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. Gentlemen, it is now a little after 12, and all of the dialogue and the information and all the perspectives was well taken, and I mean well documented, and also very, very valuable. There's a lot of wisdom and knowledge that was put forth today, in this dialogue, and I don't want this to stop. I want to continue with this. Let's build on it, and as we all are out there in the communities, dealing and working with people and dealing with scenarios and situations and life's obstacles. Let us, continue to collaborate with one another and help each other build and keep these opportunities alive. For not only for ourselves but for our children, our children's children. As we walk this path and all this wisdom and knowledge we got riding on the inside of us, man, that we were fortunate enough to be able to absorb over the years of just being able to live life a little bit longer. Every one of us have a connection into the educational arena in some capacity. So let's keep passing it on and collaborate with each other. And, let's continue to build, man. I'll be in touch for sure, about the next time. Is Saturday mornings a good time for everybody to jump on? I know there's a lot of different things that happen, with your, your careers and all. If I don't know if there's evening times are better for people, or is it, the weekend, early mornings, on a Saturday or something like that. But I'll put fillers out there. Let me know what works best, so we can continue the dialogue, man, and talk about all the other issues and all the different things that's continue to come down the pike, because this thing is really about to hit the fan. It's about to hit the fan. So it really, man, I don't want to see kids losing the opportunity and losing the control over their monetary opportunities that they've come to have at this particular point.
And remember, just a final thought, it made me think about it, and it's probably something, Jelani, you would definitely adhere to. Biblically, it's talked about where young people won't listen to old people, right? Or elders or their parents, right? There's a stress coming in this batch of kids for the last 5 years or so that some of those young people may not talk to their parents after this experience, right? And so even though we may not be their birth dads, just be aware around you if you see a player go around a system and all of a sudden they back on the street. All right, just be conscious, because you'll look at the age group, their build, they'll look like an athlete, especially if it's a young man. Ask them how they doing. Even if they don't know you, say, hey man, did you play somewhere? Right? Or hey young lady, did you play somewhere? Right? When did you stop playing? Right? How are things going for you? Let's sit down and talk. And they may break down and cry in front of you fellas right away. Because they'll look at it and say, nobody really cares. And they'll tell you the horror stories that may have happened in the past couple of years. So there's a bunch of those young people coming out. And that's at 22, man, everybody ain't emotionally strong.
Right.
You know, and then if you get young people that end up getting pregnant, having kids and all that, and they still trying to, come on, man, now you got that child. And it becomes horrible fast. And it's not a lot of cities they can run to. I tell young people, if you're going to be playing around, don't come to Michigan because Michigan will have you poor. You know what I'm saying? Like go somewhere else. Go to another city where you can work. So young people got to realize work ain't all over the country like it used to be, right? So those kind of parental advice things, Tony, we should document. And again, maybe have categories of information we can share. And we all publish kind of just little mental instructions that we can give in those categories. Then that way, even if we're not on live stream, young people can go to that site because of you and that content from all the other people that you know. They'll understand we care for them. They may reach out on a hotline and say, hey, can you have, Mr. Randy call me back? I heard he's from the such and such school and I looked him up online. I'd love to talk to him. And then that's the power of mentoring.
Right.
And Tony, just to piggyback,
Yep.
I'm going to say something. You that's why what you're offering through TGBA, like talking about, we have to protect the opportunity.
Yeah.
Now, on our side, we got to do better in making sure that we do better with the opportunity, but we have to protect it. It needs to be there. Yeah. And I know the next time we talk, we're going to go through the Scores Act. I know that was something that we want to talk about, but I just wrote something down. I just wanted to just kind of put out there for the next time we get together, Tony, that this is an important thing, this student compensation and opportunity through rights and endorsements, so-called SCORE Act.
Yes.
That right now it's in the federal bill. And you guys know, while we support the government, we all got to have one. But anytime the government gets their fingers and stuff, it has the tendency not to really oftentimes benefit us. And we're in a very contentious political climate right now.
Yeah.
But I just want to kind of put that out there. What it's saying, aiming to regulate, we got to be careful, though regulation's important, college name, image, and likeness deals, okay? Set national standards. That could limit opportunity for NIL.
Yeah.
Prohibit student athletes from being considered employees. That's important because, if you are considered an employee, then they can oftentimes limit what you can do while also offer some kind of federal protection. Yeah. And then it talks about the codification of NIL agreements, capping agent fees at 5%, which on the surface seems like a good thing, but you still have to be careful when somebody's saying capping, are you capping coaches' salaries at, and then about requiring institutions to provide health/academic support and establish uniform, meaning the same, federal framework for college sports. And I'm just going to end with these two things. There's arguments right now happening, guys, for and against this so-called SCORE Act. And here's the two kind of debates that are happening. For people that want the SCORE Act, and there are a lot of schools that want it, they're talking about stability. And you know what that means, making it easier for the power to maintain their power and control. Yeah. But they also talk about it slickly as it protecting women's sports, particularly in the Olympics. And we hadn't really talked about Title IX, but how some of the expansion of revenue and services impacts, because there is a push, and I think a rightful push, to try to make sure that women's sports get elevated alongside of men's. Okay. And then it talks about, again, people that are supporting the so-called SCORES Act. They're talking about how this is supposed to support the focus on education. And I find that to be a little bit kind of tongue-in-cheek hypocrisy, because, again, most of the discussion here is about NIL, money, and all that stuff. The second part is who are the opponents? Who's against this SCORES Act? And I know, again, we'll talk about it on our next meeting. but I just want to put it out. What it says is it protects folks from the greed of institutions and their desire to limit the rights of the student athletes to fair compensation and collective bargaining. Sounds like labor laws all across the country in every industry.
Yeah.
And again, because of my initial perspective, that the unfortunate contamination that is American capitalism is that they can't help but to monetize everything. They did not have to build these big stadiums. They didn't have to build these big field houses. It could have been like it was in the 20th century. Now, I'm not saying I want to be like that. I'm saying that what America does, it's part of her DNA, and what Western countries do is they monetize, they commercialize everything. And it does. It provides opportunity for all kinds of, ability to make money. But I think, unless you have families like Rick's and others that say there's still an educational component that I need it to be the anchor so we make good decisions, then our focus, what we can control, is getting the message to families.
Yep.
They've got to sit down.
Yep.
And they've got to anchor themselves on what's really important. Be honest, whatever that is.
Yeah, whatever it is.
Your job is like, I'm trying to be up in this mug for a year, and I'm trying to go pro, just like they would if they were a computer engineer. I'm trying.
Yep.
If Procter & Gamble calls me tomorrow, I ain't staying to get my degree from Harvard or Howard. I'm okay with that. But know what you're getting into. And then finding institutions that will partner, not just because Kentucky creates a slew of SGAs and Maxis and these great point guards. But if they're not going to be the partner that Rick talked about in supporting my son's mental health or my daughter's mental health, then maybe they're not the place. And then the last thing that you mentioned, Mike, which is important, is what happens. This is for us. And this is why I love opportunity. We meet that young man or that young woman at 22. And we remember they were the bomb. But they had kids early, they got in trouble or whatever. Well, under the old school rules, their clock says you're over. Now they're 23. They can still hope.
Right.
They can still tackle. I want that young man or that young woman to be able to go back to school at 24, make sure they're enrolled properly now. That could be their avenue, like it was for Jelani Ghana, to get to wherever he or she wanted to get to in life. So we've got to protect opportunity. And this Scores Act debate is one that we want to make sure that we dive into and throw some ideas around so we have something to say on the subject.
That's it.
Absolutely, absolutely, man. That'll be the one thing that would be definitely first up on the list. Is to attack that and come up with some resolutions. The one thing that bothers me about the Scores Act is them trying to gain exemption from the Sherman Antitrust Act, which infringes upon the ability of the student athlete to be compensated and monetized off of their brand, name, image, and likeness and things of that nature, or they control it, as you mentioned, Joel, and some of those, the rules and the outlines about this whole thing. So not only is that a big component that's coming down the pipe where there's going to be a voting in Congress about what's going to happen with that. And then you got Donald Trump saying he's going to write an executive order with, after the round table they had about a week ago, to say that, hey, we're going to push this Scores Act. Let's start right there as a base and push this thing. I'm going to do an executive order and be prepared for the lawsuits that's going to come behind it. It's like he don't care. He's like, he'll push it through or try to push it through or convince Congress to pass it and then worry about being sued later. That's his position on it. So this thing is really big. Then the other part that we have to focus on too, and I think, Randy, you and I, we talked about a little bit the other day, is the fact you have the older kids being recruited and brought in and, and thrown money at and brought in and taken over these spots at the collegiate levels. and the high school kids are being penalized in terms of having the opportunity. So it goes back to the opportunity again,
Right.
Rick, about for those kids who are trying to get to the next level. Now, I'm gonna give you a real quick scenario, a real quick example. I'm gonna walk away from it. Of even kids that are at Division I schools or Division II schools that are doing really well. Let's talk about University of Arkansas real quick. DJ Wagner, who McDonald's All-American, I sought after, Calipari brings him in. He's a starting guard, right? All of a sudden, E-Cuff comes. And now DJ, he ain't starting, he ain't playing. He's getting very few minutes. So you're not bringing these kind of kids in and they're not sitting. You understand what I'm saying? So even at some of the smaller levels, you got kids that are being recruited. They're coming in and they're in the mix, and then all of a sudden they get recruited over because of these opportunities that's out there. So what happens to that kid? That I once was a starter. I was once a great player, but then you bring someone in, you recruit over me, and now I'm sitting on the bench now, and I'm forced to leave. For another opportunity to play. So there's so many different things that we want to talk about, we want to tackle, because they all are a part of this whole thing.
All happening at the same time.
All happening at the same time. I tell you, that educational piece is so stellar. Not knowing how do I handle, how do I navigate, what do I do? I know. You got some coaches and some people out there saying, man, loyalty. Okay. So what about if I'm in a situation like that where, you recruited over a kid, you recruited over me, what you want me to do? You want me to be loyal, stay here and sit on a pine, or look for an opportunity to go somewhere and play? So there's a lot of individualized cases that we have to really take a look at. And this is what happens when we talk about this Scores Act and making these decisions to control everything, because now, everyone has a different story. Every story is not the same. We can't be generalizing about the scenarios of each one of these student athletes. We got to be cognizant and mindful that every child, every kid is individually different at some point. A lot of different things.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely some baseline attributes that are equal. But there's variations of what decisions they make of what to do next. So yes,
absolutely, and that's all I'm saying. That is a lot of different scenarios out there, man. And man, we got a lot of ground to cover here. And,
we're gonna get it done, though.
We're gonna get it done.
We're gonna get it done. We're gonna make it happen.
Again, man, I want to thank each and every one of you brothers, man, for coming on and sharing your time to have this discussion, this debate, this round table, man, because much appreciated. This information got to get out to the masses, and awareness is important, and mental health is important, well-being is important, financial literacy is important, community is important, all of these things are very important. The financial literacy, what do we do? How do we handle it? We plan in a short span of time. Even if you go to the next level, if you play in the league 10 years, you're only 30 years old, and so that's a whole nother conversation, another podcast when we start talking about that part of it. Players, who's eligible to come, former NBA players, G League players, international players are now coming in and taking these spots away from the kids coming out of high school, things of that
soccer,
nature.
volleyball, track and field. I mean, they're coming back. Them athletes are coming backwards. They like, hey, look, they coming back to get that bread.
They're coming back. They're coming back. So there's a encompassing in all of this discussion as the landscape has evolved to this huge perspective, man, that we've really got to take a look at in all different kind of angles. And the vantage points that we're going to look at it from is from guys like yourselves who's bringing different vantage points, different perspectives, different ideals, different opinions, and also how you see how we could bring resolution and to all of these issues. And the brainstorming, man, must continue, man. So again,